here's 6 things I've learned from competing in 3 pro events on the Rose Ladies series this week. So I'd definitely say on the balance of things, all 3 pros I played with this week hit driver a lot more off the tee than I did. Shot. Great drive. Now, one part of that is probably they're playing full time, they're practicing full time, so they're probably used to hitting that club a lot more, maybe a little bit more confident in where it's going to go, but definitely being more aggressive a lot of the time. I thought maybe it wouldn't pay off for them because generally on the courses we've played where drivers pitched has been a lot tighter, but actually most of the time they've got away with it. And we do know generally, if we look at the shot scope stats, if you get further up the hole, you've got a shorter club in, you're going to score better. And I'm not saying that loads of the time I went down a club it wasn't the most effective, but I definitely probably could have dropped shots off my scorecard by being more aggressive and hitting driver more. I also think a big thing to feed off that is just how confident the pros are, or they present themselves in that way to me when I'm watching them play golf. Whereas I know in my head I'm definitely thinking there's out of bounds there, there's this left, there's this, that. And actually the best thing to do is just visualize the shot you want to hit, really focus on executing that rather than worrying about everything around you. I do think the pros are just better at doing that. They pull out driver a lot more, they're aggressive, and they just get on with it. I think choosing the right club and the right strategy is so underrated, and this week I think that's even more being emphasised by seeing quite a few of the golfers with caddies and just having someone to bounce ideas back, or someone to say no that's not right, or to double check the wind, or just have a different awareness of what's going on. Because once you're playing in these tournaments and you set off and you're trying to keep pace, you're trying to keep up with the pros, you're not trying to distract everyone, you're trying to play well, and especially if you get a bit offline, you have to chip out, catch up, suddenly being in a situation and not quite accounting for the wind correctly, or where a slope's going to go, or where the pin is, can really affect your overall shots. And I think it still comes back to that theory that I have, that we should all be playing for the middle or back distances of the green, because so many times you can just get caught out by firing at pins and you don't need to do it. Now, a lot of the tournaments we've played this week have been on links courses, very windy, and the wind plays a massive part in the shot and the shot selection. 5, 6, -6 slope, 150. Into the wind. So even into the wind. And I think as golfers we spend so many hours on the range trying to work on our swing, trying to hit perfect shots, and actually on the golf course it's not about that at all. It's almost about avoiding certain zones and being able to pick the right shot to hit in that scenario. Some of the most successful shots I've hit this week haven't been anywhere near a stock shot, and loads of people say how far do you hit your 7-iron to know kind of what the right shot is, but actually a lot of times this week it's been a left pin on a right to left wind, and I've had to hit a fade and hold it up into the wind to keep it on the green because the wind's so strong, and you need to know how much the shot's going to take off for that. So instead of hitting my 9-iron, I'm hitting a 7-iron because I'm hitting a high cut. The wind's going to push it across, take some of the distance off, but it's going to stop it from overdrawing and missing short-sided. I think for me it's been a big learning curve in not just going and practicing off a perfectly flat lie and hitting flush shots, because actually this week it doesn't matter if I flush my irons perfectly. It's about the creativity of hitting the right shot, picking the right shot, and knowing what to do. So I think going out and playing with someone who's maybe a similar golfer to you and like caddying for each other and learning off what each other think and picking the right clubs can help you build up a library of how to play better. It's definitely been interesting in the practice rounds for me, playing with some of the girls where we have very similar games, and that really helps in terms of building your strategy. Something that's actually been so useful for me this week is, obviously I have so much technology, but my Power Caddy trolley, I keep banging on about this, it's CT12 GPS, and it has this full hole display. So on every hole I've been able to zoom in, check where all the bunkers are, check the distances to the dog legs, and that's made a massive difference off the tee in terms of picking the right club. But I do still think into the greens I've definitely made some mistakes where I've not analysed the wind correctly, not necessarily factored in every single factor going on, because maybe I'm just panicking and thinking so much about hitting the next shot well. So I can definitely work on picking the right club, and I think you should really work on that too. Just pausing for a second to give you a chance to hit that subscribe button. And while you're there, you might as well like this video and drop us a comment about what else you want to see on the channel. So one thing I'd say I've learned from this week is generally like my short bunker shots where you just have to hit it high, soft, are pretty good. But actually a lot of the pros have much more variety of shots from the bunkers, and especially kind of longer greenside shots I've struggled with. Kind of ones where you need to carry the ball further, get it out to go faster, but you don't want it to come out thin. They seem to have lots more control of that, and they also have the ability to spin the ball on those longer shots so they can get the distance but then get it to stop. I think for most golfers, obviously all we're trying to do is get the ball out of the bunker, and the majority of the time that's good enough, but actually at this level there's so much control and they're getting up and down out of the bunker so much, almost more than in other places. So I do think if I was going to play at this level more, I need to build up a more versatile library of different bunker shots. And I think it's worth for people back home, obviously having that stock shot that you can get the ball just out of onto the green, but also having maybe a different club or a slightly different technique where you can hit the ball, say maybe 20 or 30 yards and get those shots that can go a little bit further. Because if you do end up in like a front bunker to a back pin, it's really hard to get all the way back to there, and you can end up in that situation where you literally just get it out, then you've got a massive long putt and you can end up 3-putt, and then you just compiling 2 errors on top of each other, whereas if you had a stock shot that went out a little bit further, it could really help. So a massive thing I've learned this week is that my green reading is definitely worse than I thought it is, and actually that's very important because I've hit so many greens this week, but then you keep missing putts and then it just gets in your head. And sometimes I've been looking at putts and I genuinely don't even know like which way it breaks. And sometimes like my playing partners, caddies, have been like, yeah, this is right to left. And I'm looking at it thinking, this is left to right. I'm like, this is not a good situation. So I definitely need to work on a better system for green reading. I think I'm probably going to go and do an aim point session because I definitely need to do something different. I think that then kind of just feeds into your mentality a lot, because what I've noticed is loads of the pros are really aggressive, especially with their short puts. They're so confident on the line and confident that they're going to hole it, and that makes a massive difference. Also, it is early in the season. These events have been played in the end of April, start of May, and the greens obviously aren't that quick yet and aren't the condition they necessarily would be in the middle of summer. So I really like to roll everything dead weight and soft, which is quite hard if one, you're not perfectly confident on the line, and two, if there's any little imperfections left, because obviously we've not had full grass growth yet. There's definitely a few putts where if I just hit them a bit firmer, they would have gone in. As well as working on the green reading, you also really need to match like the pace of your putt on that day relative to the surface you've got. I've probably done a lot more work on my long game recently than my putting, and actually I feel really confident in my stroke. Like I was starting the putts really well on line once I committed to the line. It was just quite infuriating when I hit lots of putts like perfectly where I wanted them to go and then they didn't go in because I'd read the greens wrong. So if you're struggling with your putting, don't always just blame your stroke. There's a lot of different elements to put in. One, have you got the line right? Have you got the pace right relative to that line? And have you aimed the ball correctly? And actually we know even if we put a robot down and it hits a putt on the perfect line, they won't all go in. So sometimes you just got to accept some balls will miss. I think one thing I probably underestimated is just how tiring a week like this is. So for this week, there's 6 back-to-back days that the pros are playing, because there's 3 different one-day events this week on the Rose Series, and each day in between is a practice round. So you've got 6 quite full-on days of one going out and learning each new golf course and then competing the next day. Now, obviously, you don't know where you're going to get drawn, so it could be that one day you're teeing off at 3 p.m, the next day you're teeing off at 9 a.m. You've got to add practice round times into that. Hours of practicing, putting prep, going to the gym. And actually, by round 6, which was at Formby Ladies, I was pretty exhausted. Obviously, I'm not used to going in week in, week out playing tournament golf like these girls are, and I definitely did underestimate the kind of mental capacity and clarity you need to have to keep going through all those events. And you kind of really do need to be strict with your schedule and make sure you get enough rest and sleep and eat the right things to make sure you're feeling good each day. And obviously these girls are doing that every week, and if you've got 4-day tournaments plus practice rounds, they've got 5-6 days of consecutive golf every week. I do think people can massively underestimate the mental side of golf. Being out on the golf course and concentrating for 4+ hours, making the right decision for each shot, is actually something that's really demanding and requires a lot of discipline to keep doing that consistently. And that's definitely something I need to work on. I think sometimes I just have 1 or 2 holes where my brain almost like needs a timeout and I just don't quite make the right club decision or fully execute the decision I've made. And that can just bring in those big scores, which then kind of ruins your round. The last thing I'd say I'd learned is pros just play with such confidence, and I think it's actually really hard to play good golf if you don't believe in yourself and believe you can go out and shoot a good golf score. It's very hard to play well if you stood on a tee box or an approach shot or even a putt or chip and you're really worried about hitting a bad shot. And I think so many of us do that, and actually the bigger picture we need to be looking at is focusing on the shot we're trying to hit and the skill set that we do have. And a lot of us are much better at golf than we think we are, but we focus on the bad shots. And like a really good tip, I heard of this from a psychologist before, is to after every round write down like your 1, 2 or 3 best shots from the day, and then you can look back on that and really focus on what you're doing well, rather than worrying about the bad shots all the time and thinking about the things we didn't do quite right. Because actually a lot of the time, even the shots we hit bad or kind of drove up our score a little bit relatively weren't that bad at all. If we look at PGA Tour pros, we know their dispersion with driver is well over 60 yards wide. So why do we get so annoyed with ourselves when we miss one fairway? Golf is not a game of perfect. It's really hard to be good all the time. We're outside in the elements. There's so many other factors outside of just how well we hit the golf ball. And actually I think we need to focus a little bit more on what we do well and our good shots, give ourselves a little bit more confidence when we go out on the golf course. We feel that, it helps us relax and helps us play a little bit better, because I've definitely noticed that I do tense up when I'm playing competition golf, especially at the pro level. You really want to play your best, you're a bit nervous. Also, a lot of the stuff I do is on camera, which also stresses you out a little bit. So learning to remember your good shots, be confident and just be able to play a little bit more relaxed is definitely something I'm going to be focusing on, because you're only going to play better golf by being in that mental state, and being really kind of stressed out and nervous is not the way to go.